ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. It is officially franchise tag season in the NFL, and we'll talk about it tonight. Does it make sense for the Cowboys? If so, which player is the true candidate to get the tag by the Cowboys in 2022? Or should the Cowboys stay away from it all and just do their thing without tagging any player? We'll talk about that and much more on tonight's episode of ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. Make sure that you hit the like button as you join the stream. Make sure you also share the show. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know about ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And shout out to the podcast audience. Also, if you are listening to it on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a 5-star review, help us out, and let's get more Cowboys fans involved here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Let's go. What is our burner account over at YouTube? Lumen, as always, representing Titan Nation. What is up? Dallas Young says, what is up as well? Chuck over at Facebook. Anyone else watching the USFL draft right now says Dallas Young. To be honest, not really. I'm not watching it, to be honest, but I am interested in hearing if any of you guys are. Good evening, Kenneth. Thank you for joining the show. Well, let's start the show officially. It will be an interesting one. What is up, everyone? Let's start the show. Here we go. What is up, everyone? Welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodríguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. With a lot more content coming your way throughout the entire offseason, make sure that you check out adcsports.com/Dallas for Cowboys content. And look at that. You draft nuts, we will absolutely love this. Shane Carter put out a 7-round mock draft. He asked us on the ADC Sports chat, he asked us, would you guys read a 7-round mock draft? And I told him, Shane, people read mock drafts for next year as soon as the current draft is over. So heck yeah, we would read a 7-round mock draft. Well, you can do so over at adcsports.com/Dallas. Cole Patterson writing a counterpoint on whether or not the Dallas Cowboys should break the bank on Randy Gregory. And as always, Mavericks content as well. What to expect from Dallas coming out of the All-Star break. Ian got you covered over at adcsports.com/Dallas. And I will tell you one thing about Ian is he will tell you, he will tell you stuff as it is. He will not sugarcoat anything. He is very objective and very realistic. So make sure you check the site out for more Dallas sports content. What is up, Primetime Phil? Clayton Young watching. No, excuse me. I messed up. I was reading Dallas Young's comment, but I kind of mixed his comment up. Clayton Thurston, former Cowboys quarterback, got drafted with the 5th pick in the USFL. Hey, thank you for the nugget. That is interesting. Definitely. I do remember Clayton, of course. What is up? Bruce got the use. Peter Rizzo. Guys, it is franchise tag season in the NFL. Starting today all the way up to March 8th. The NFL teams can place franchise tags on the players that they want to. And it's an interesting year for the Cowboys in that sense, because you can see some players that are candidates to getting the franchise tag. The Cowboys have a few players that they really don't want to let go. And I'm talking about Michael Gallup, Dalton Schultz, Randy Gregory, mainly these three, maybe. But yet, you take a look at Michael Gallup, and I don't think anyone has the sense that Gallup might get the tag, especially because of what the Cowboys have invested at the wide receiver position. And to me, it feels like if you're going to stick with Michael Gallup one way or another, that means very likely moving on from Amari Cooper. And if you are to move on from Amari Cooper, do you want to do it for a 1-year franchise tag with Michael Gallup? So I don't think that is definitely a possibility there. So I would dismiss Gallup right off the bat in this conversation. To me, it comes down to only Randy Gregory and Dalton Schultz. And I don't know what you guys think about this, but the first question of the show is, who makes the most sense to franchise tag? And I, of course, will give you my opinion. Who makes the most sense to franchise tag, Randy Gregory or Dalton Schultz? And in the meantime, while you guys give me your answers, let's talk about what a franchise tag would look like for Randy Gregory, because he's a defensive end, a pass rusher, and you know that the going rate for this position is never cheap. And Randy Gregory, and these are projected numbers by overthecap.com, the projected franchise tag would be quite high, $20.2 million. And just as a fast reminder for you guys, franchise tag is the average salary for the top 5 players at the position. In top 5 players, by that I mean in terms of salaries. And the transition tag is more or less the same, but instead of taking the top 5, you take the top 10 players there. So a transition tag is cheaper. However, it doesn't guarantee you that you will stick with the player, because any other team in the NFL can can exceed your offer, and then you have the right of first refusal as the team that tagged the player. You can match that offer or let him walk. So these are the possible tags for Randy Gregory. I got to tell you the truth. I don't see Gregory as a potential tag for the Cowboys. My answer is Dalton Schultz, and I will get into the reasons why he makes the most sense to me with the Cowboys to franchise tag him. But I don't think that Randy Gregory is really a candidate for this. I think that the number is too high. I think that if you're the Cowboys, you're hoping, and I've talked about this on Primetime before, I don't think that Randy Gregory should give the Cowboys any hometown discount. I don't think that he must be expected to do so. I really don't. If Randy Gregory wants to break the bank, go ahead and do so, whether it's with the Cowboys or anywhere else. However, maybe the Cowboys are hoping on that. And we've talked about this before on Primetime. After everything that Gregory has gone through, I think that if there's one thing that we could applaud this front office for, is the way that they've handled things with Randy. And maybe Jerry Jones and company, maybe they're hoping that Randy gives them a discount. But I think that number is too high. I don't see how that number works for the Cowboys, who are currently $22 million over the cap. And I was making the calculations early this morning, about what if the Cowboys go crazy with restructures. And if they go crazy with it and they restructure just about every player that has important benefits, if you restructure them, the Cowboys could get as high as maybe $30 to $40 million, maybe even a bit more in salary cap space if they truly go all in with the restructures. And you're going to hit $20 million of that for a franchise tag with Randy Gregory. I don't see how that makes sense, financial sense, for the Cowboys. I don't see Randy Gregory being franchise tag. Remember, and this is an important piece of the discussion when it comes to franchise tags. These salaries are fully guaranteed, which don't give you a lot of flexibility in the salary cap conversation. Like, you cannot play with bonuses. You cannot play with cap numbers being different than what you are paying the athlete. If you franchise tag a player, that's your cap number, and that is fully guaranteed, and there is no cap flexibility in that. So yet another reason why it wouldn't make sense to me when it comes to number 94. Let's see. Burner account says, I don't think any of them are really good candidates for the franchise tag. That is something that I agree with. Chava Vargas giving maybe a more drastic suggestion, saying cut Jarwin and then tag Schultz. Tripp says, nope, get rid of Schultz. Primetime Field says, if only we could use it for a free agent before they hit free market from another team, that would change the game. Only if the main team didn't franchise. Well, although that would be fun to see, the chaos behind it, now that would be pretty unfair for the players. Like, I can get, and I'm not a fan of the franchise tag from the player's perspective. Of course, no one would be. But if the players are fighting the franchise tag because they claim it to be unfair, then Primetime Field's ideas, now that would be cruel to the players. But hey, I would like to see the chaos, though. In a selfish kind of way, I would be here for the chaos. That would be maybe like an expansion draft every single year. Franchise tag Jake McQuaid, says burner account, the Cowboys long snapper who is also a free agent. And we have not talked enough about McQuaid, maybe. I mean, he's a long snapper. What is there to talk about? But hey, I was afraid that Jake McQuaid made any small, minuscule mistake. I was afraid of it because we would not have heard the end of it with LP Ladouceur. Even more so if he had not retired and maybe he had signed with another team, and then LP would have gone on in an alternative timeline to have another perfect season for another team. Can you imagine Cowboys Nation's reaction to Jake McQuaid making a mistake if that was the case? Like a noticeable game-costing mistake. That would have been also maybe kind of fun to watch in social media, but super painful to watch as a Cowboys fan. LP Ladouceur is a legend, says burner account, 100%. Really, really a legend. But anyways, moving on to the one player that, in my opinion, would make sense for the franchise tag, even though I would not expect it to happen. I'm not expecting this to happen. I told you guys that my confidence level from 1 to 10 for keeping Dalton Schultz was at a very low 1. But if there's one player that makes sense to franchise tag for the Cowboys, it's Dalton Schultz. And that is for two main reasons. Number one, the projected franchise tag is $10.8 million. So you can round that up to $11 million. That is a lower number than what his market value would be if he becomes a free agent. I don't think you can say the same about Randy Gregory. I don't think that if Gregory signs a multi-year deal, I'm not so sure that he gets over $20 million per year. However, if Dalton Schultz makes it to free agency and he signs a multi-year contract, I think he would be more in the range of $12.5 million, which is more or less what Hunter Henry went by in 2021, or even as high as $13 million per year, which is what Pro Football Focus is projecting the Cowboys tight end to end up signing. Now, there's the other possibility, and this might be a little bit more tricky, and I might be wrong about this. You can tell me what you think in the chat. And by that, I mean, what about the transition tag for Dalton Schultz? And remember, the way that the transition tag works is that it is cheaper because instead of taking the top 5 average salaries, you're taking the top 10 average salaries. But any other team can still sign the player with a higher offer. And you as a team get the right to maybe match the other team's offer and keep your player. But you need to match it. You cannot give him any less than what another team offers your transition tagged player. But I wonder if maybe the fact that there's a lot of tight ends in this class of free agents, maybe there's a possibility that kind of overloads the market, and that has happened before at another positions. We have seen years in which there are a lot of safeties out there and they end up signing for less money. But that would come down to the simple question of, is Dalton Schultz truly valued as much by other teams around the NFL as we think? I think that's the case, and I think that Dalton Schultz will end up signing for a contract near the $13 million per year mark, but we might be wrong about it. And it has happened before, especially when there are a lot of players at a specific position in the market. To me, he makes the most sense out of all the players within the Cowboys. It makes the most sense, Dalton Schultz. And even with him, I don't think that it happens. I really don't think that it happens. Kenneth Fraser says, I don't think that Schultz will be a free agent. So Kenneth is optimistic that the Cowboys will end up working things out with the tight end and sticking with him. That would be amazing. Let's see. Burner account says, Mo, I went to a game in Seattle and saw a fan with his jersey. Real fan. Oh, with LP's jersey. I was confused for a moment there. I was thinking about Dalton Schultz, but hey, having an LP jersey, now that is legit. I definitely can see a desperate team give Schultz $13.5 million per year, says Dallas Young. And to be honest, he might be worth it. He might just be worth it. If you take a look at what he did in 2020 without a starting caliber quarterback, and then he followed it up in 2021, and maybe he's not the most athletic tight end or the most dangerous vertical threat kind of tight end, but he is the guy that will show up. At least that is how I would describe Dalton Schultz. You know that he's very likely to catch that football, that he can be that reliable tight end that your quarterback can look for. And maybe that is the reason why the Cowboys feel like they need to get him back on the Cowboys. He moves the chains, as Peter Rizzo is pointing out on Facebook. He really does, and he showed up for the Cowboys consistently. That is the word for Dalton Schultz, consistency. And sometimes you don't have to be Travis Kelce or you don't have to be George Kittle to stand out. You just have to be the guy that, hey, if the quarterback looks for you on third down and you show up on underneath routes or choice routes or just throws at the sticks, you might get that back. You might get that money. But hey, Stephen White says just no tax, and that's also fair. You can like Dalton Schultz, but maybe you cannot like him enough to tag him. But I think that if you are the Cowboys, and we will talk more about this tomorrow night, by the way, we will dive into what a Rams-like all-in would look like for the Dallas Cowboys, taking into account the context of the Cowboys roster and the salary cap and their ways of doing business in free agency and all of that. So I think it will be an interesting episode tomorrow night, but sort of a sneak peek into it. If you are the Cowboys and you say, you know what, we are going to go all in. We are going to take advantage that Tom Brady's out of the NFC, that maybe Aaron Rodgers potentially leaves, whether it's to the AFC or he retires. If you are the Cowboys and you make that decision that you want to go all in, maybe that transition tag or maybe that franchise tag that features a lower number than what Schultz is likely to get per year in the market, you might be willing to do so. I think he's been there more than he's for his share, says Kenneth Fraser. He's Jason Witten, says Sugar Daddy Williams. He's Jason Witten, but in year 12. I think that would be maybe a fair assessment. I don't know what year 12 was, though, for Jason Witten, but I like that comment. I think people forget, says Primetime Phil, he dropped a lot as well. That's why Dallas isn't stuffing over themselves to sign him. Blocking was below average. Listen, however, I will say this. I think that he had 2 dropped passes, though, at least according to some sites. He only had 2 dropped passes. I think that is the number. Might be wrong, but I looked at this a few days ago, and I thought I saw only 2 dropped passes. Now, of course, these kind of statistics vary a lot from side to side. As for the blocking, it maybe was not that bad. I know that Schultz isn't the great blocker. He's certainly not George Kittle. But ESPN had an article out there today in which they compared his blocking win rates in the pass and in running, and he was not that bad in terms of the win rates that ESPN puts out. But sometimes perception can play against us. And I know that we saw Dalton Schultz get beat a lot. But the thing is, I don't think he needs to be that super blocker to bring him back. He bubbled a lot. Samuel Rose says, that's fair, though. That is fair. Even if he had low drops, he did bubble the football a lot. So that is a fair thing to point out. But yeah, if there's one player in the Cowboys that to me makes sense, he would be it. And actually, I'm going to invert maybe the 2 following segments of the show, because I want to ask you for your random thoughts before we leave tonight. Your random thoughts on the Cowboys for this Tuesday. What is your random thought Tuesday? Let me know in the chat. And the reason why I flipped those 2 final topics around is because my random thought is that I've seen people talk about Jaron Kears getting the tag, and that is something that I cannot get behind. I don't see Jaron Kears having that market value to justify him getting the tag. Now, make no mistake about it. I think he was the surprise player of the year. I think that the Cowboys absolutely need to get Jaron Kears back. I think he will get paid way more than he was paid last year, obviously, because he was one of the most important defensive players on the Cowboys in 2021. But I don't see him getting a number close to $13 million. So that's just my random thought Tuesday is I don't think Jaron Kears goes for a very high rate that would justify him getting any kind of tag. If push comes to shove, maybe think about it, but I don't see Jaron Kears getting the tag. Jaron Kears was on 105.3 The Fan, by the way, this morning, and he was talking as if he was a guaranteed Cowboy in 2022, which is something that I love. He was talking about the Cowboys bringing back Dan Quinn for his 2nd season with the defense, and he was talking about how exciting that was and how that is going to really let them take that next step in 2022. So Jaron Kears wants to be in Dallas. That much is clear, I think. That much is clear. So hopefully he is right about his future, and hopefully Jaron Kears is around for another season. So some of the random thoughts. Let's see. Schultz is that gal you don't want to date, but not a gal you call when you are bored on a Tuesday night. Says burner account, just meh. I don't know about that comment, burner account. Let's see. We need an offensive lineman in the draft, says Holly. Definitely do. The Cowboys are definitely going to address, I believe, the offensive line in the draft. Of course, you also need the board to fall a certain way, but that is one of the highest priorities for the Cowboys. And it really goes because you can look at it from a lot of perspectives, right? You can look at it from the guard perspective, which is a top need for the Cowboys. The center position, that we feel better about Tyler Viadish than we do Connor McGovern, for example. But the Cowboys could still use an upgrade or competition if we're talking late rounds in the NFL draft. You can certainly bring competition for Tyler Viadish. Sugar Daddy says he'll catch, Sugar Daddy Williams says he'll catch everything, block okay, but Schultz is not outrunning anybody. I don't think he's a vertical threat either. So that is right. Kenneth Fraser doesn't see Curious getting a tag either. Remembering an old song, Popcorn instrumental, really random. So Stephen White, yeah, that was random. Burner account says, do you remember the abyss of quarterbacks Dallas had after Aikman and before Romo? Yeah, I, as a 22-year-old fan, I don't remember much of it, fortunately. But I remember this video that it was a YouTube account that made hype videos, and these were fan made. And I remember that I think it was, who was it? Colin Cowherd. I'm not the biggest fan, right? But Colin Cowherd, and I remember a soundbite of him within that video. Then after 8 Man, it was 12 years of a gravel road. That soundbite with Cowherd's voice, which is one of the best voices ever in sportscasting, talking specifically about the boys. That soundbite has always stuck with me for one reason or another. 12 years of a gravel road, something like that. Peter Rizzo says, I hope Alarcon works in the O-line. Hey, I do too, Peter. I would love to see Isaac Alarcon involved with the Cowboys. Hopefully happens. Worst case scenario, please let him stay in the practice squad. I'm hoping for it. I know that he has been working so hard as well. He has been training with Duke Manyweather. We've talked about that in the show before. Hopefully he's able to stick around. We know that he has been working hard to develop into a next level player. And he has the physical traits to compete in the NFL. Unfortunately, I do, says Primetime Phil. Liv was the worst. Burner account says, I remember when we had Vinny Testaverde and Drew Bledsoe. You know how I remember Drew Bledsoe the most? When playing Madden as a kid. I remember playing a lot with Drew Bledsoe in Madden. That I remember more of that than I do the Bledsoe Cowboys, to be honest. But again, I'm 22 years old, so that is the main reason why. Anyways, moving on, Anthony Hitchens. What is up, Martin? Thank you for joining the show. Anthony Hitchens, released by the Kansas City Chiefs. Former Dallas Cowboy, a position of need for Dallas. So I feel like this question is mandatory. Would Anthony Hitchens be an upgrade or a downgrade to last year's linebacker group? Or in other words, should the Cowboys be interested in bringing in Anthony Hitchens? It's one question that I cannot figure out. My instant reaction is I don't think that the Cowboys would be interested in Anthony Hitchens. I don't think that he would be an upgrade over Leighton Vander Esch and Keanu Neal. But also, we don't know if those two are coming back. And then there's the final question that Mitesh is pointing out on YouTube. Depends if he is cheap. And that is another thing that I cannot figure out. How cheap is Anthony Hitchens going to be? He signed a 5-year deal with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2018. And that his average salary was $9 million per year. Year by year, his snap count went lower and lower with the Chiefs. And that is more than anything because the Chiefs were adding talent. The most notable of which was definitely Nick Bolton, right? This year's rookie linebacker for Kansas City. I don't think that it's totally out of the question because Hitchens, and we know this, he's not the athletic linebacker that maybe you want on Dan Quinn's defense, but he is a smart guy, and he's a player that has managed to stay in the NFL thanks to his, and not only that, start in the NFL thanks to his maybe intangibles and the fact that he is a hard worker. and he's a very smart player. A burner account says, what does he even play now? Mike? He did play Mike for the Chiefs. He was playing Mike for the Chiefs. Paul says he's a hitter, though. That is also true. Jason says he was okay, but he cannot cover. And then Martin Diaz says Hitchens is too freaking old. He will be 30 years old when the season begins next season. Well, I was going to say next year, but we are already in 2022. Dallas Young says, I would rather draft a Mike or let Gabriel Cox man the middle of the defense. Now, we could talk about Gabriel Cox being the main guy, but you might also need another guy either way. Also a topic of discussion that we will have more in depth here on Primetime. But what I mean is, we feel good about Micah Parsons, but you want linebackers on the roster because you want freedom to play Micah wherever you want him to play. Rather have Leighton Vander Esch than Hitchens, says burner account. If Leighton Vander Esch and Neil leaves, gotta have another linebacker, says Paul. I think it all depends about how much he's going to cost. And if that number is close to $5 million per year, I don't dismiss the idea. I'm not a fan, but hey, he can play and he can start in the NFL. We have seen this already with Kansas City. If there are better options, says Dallas Junkie, saying I'm all for them as well. Not a fan. I just think linebacker is going to be a concern for the Cowboys. We'll talk more about this on the show, probably on Thursday. I'm not entirely sure about the programming beyond tomorrow night. But anyways, an interesting question to think about. I will leave you guys tonight. Thank you for joining the show. As always, please hit the like button and share the show. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know about ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And remember, for more Cowboys content, you can check out adcsports.com/Dallas. For more Cowboys content and for more Mavericks content as well, including that article from What to Expect from Dallas coming out of the All-Star break. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Sugar Daddy, Holly, Peter Rizzo, Stephen White. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you want me to say. but hey. Oh, I just saw your comment. All right, yeah, I get it now. Kenneth Fraser, thank you as well for joining the show, and all of you guys. Shout out to the podcast audience as well. I will see you tomorrow night. I'm your primetime host, Mauricio Rodríguez. See you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central. Thank you guys. Enjoy your Tuesday.